speak to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Richard Tice is with us. Afternoon to you, Richard.
Ian, a very good afternoon from an incredibly enthusiastic, energetic, bursting with excitement Birmingham at our conference. Nearly 4,000 delegates, and I'm standing in front of a taxi in Reform colours that I saved from London. I saved from Sadiq Khan. It's a non-ULEZ compliant taxi. It's fantastic, and there is just masses and masses of enthusiasm here. The growth, it's remarkable. And you know, we've spoken before, but you know, I'm so proud to be the MP for Boston and Skegness amongst the other 4 MPs, and I think it's fair to say we're making quite a lot of noise, and we just tell it as it is, the good, the bad and the ugly.
I was about to sort of pick up on that point, and I guess, you know, you've had conferences before. Nigel, in previous political identities, you know, similar in the crossover, has had conferences. But this is something rather different, isn't it? This is a conference where you've returned 5 members of Parliament. You know, students of politics in years to come should be studying that and saying they did what? In half an hour, they got 5 MP. I mean, this was an extraordinary result. I said just before you came on, to me, politically, a story equally as big as the party that almost came from nowhere getting 5 MPs is the amount of seats that you came second in. I think that is just as telling, frankly, as the big headline.
It is. It was, I think, 98 seconds, of whom about 90 were second to the Labour Party. And that's why you talk about the 5 MPs. One of those, of course, is our leader, Nigel, the first time he's ever succeeded in getting elected to Westminster. And that success in almost 100 seats, doing so, that's part of the ambition of this conference, setting out the stall of how we're going to win the next general election in 4 or 5 years' time. There's a loveless landslide for Labour. What they've achieved, or the errors they've made in 11 weeks. I talked about Starmageddon earlier this year. We've now got Starmageddon on steroids. It's like the Rocky Horror Show, frankly. And yeah, I truly believe that under Nigel's leadership, with our chairman's ear, Yusuf, taking it forward, he's been responsible for driving this extraordinary growth in this conference. Yeah, it's huge. People should feel really energised. And by the way, if you can't be here, you can watch it on live stream all afternoon. Don't miss it. Whatever you're doing, cancel it. Get involved.
And in terms of where you go from here, I mean, you said there about winning the next election, Richard. That's a genuine ambition.
It is, absolutely. And look, we all know you have to be ambitious in life. Frankly, if you're not prepared to take a risk, you've got no chance. The biggest risk in life is never taking one. So yeah, it's right to be optimistic. It's right to be ambitious. We've got county and mayoral elections next May. We're gunning for those. We're going for them big time. That'll be the first test. That will hopefully will win lots and lots of county seats. And that will give extra confidence to people. Say, wow, this journey is happening. I want to get on board. And you talk about political history and legacy and students in decades to come. Just imagine if as part of that history that we do actually win the next general election and we literally save Britain from the ruin and the rot and the disastrous track that it's being taken to under this deeply socialist, deeply authoritarian government.
It is argued by your critics maybe, but some objectively saying, well, look, you know, you're pretty much a one policy party. You make a lot of noise, you punch above your weight, you've got some charismatic characters, yourself included, Richard. I've known you for a long time. I know you guys are sincere, but to many people it's about immigration, not much else. And yes, you are very entertaining, very passionate, unrivaled in your tell it like it is approach, and that's incredibly attractive, very mesmeric to some people. But really, you've got to be broader if you want to start winning elections.
Yeah, and that's part of the growth story, of course. You've got to get noticed, and you've also got to focus on key issues of deep, real concern to the British people. And immigration is a massive, massive concern. But equally, we've got the best economic policy, not starting paying income tax until you earn £20,000 a year. That's really important, including for pensioners, of course, who've been terribly treated already under this terrible Labour government, removing the winter fuel allowance. I've been talking about economic policies. I've now got the Financial Times, the Sunday Times, people like Robert Peston agreeing with me on economic policy with regard to the Bank of England. And look, I'm going to be talking this afternoon about the catastrophe of net zero. I think the next election could well be a net zero election if I've got anything to do with it. We need to scrap it. It's a disaster. So yeah, we're going to move on to other things that are a real concern to people. That mean we've got high cost of living unnecessarily, high energy costs, we're losing jobs, we're killing industries, and we're uncompetitive. And old, cold people die early.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on, tragically. Your party leader, Nigel Farage, gives a speech at 4 o'clock this afternoon. As we both know, Nigel doesn't sit down and often make notes and speeches. He just, off the top of his head, is able to be incredibly passionate, incredibly fluent. I'm sure for a leader's speech, he's had to make at least some bullet points. Is there going to be anything in there you can tell us about, though, Richard?
Oh, no, Ian, patience is a virtue. I know you want the exclusive, but I'm just going to have to ask you to wait 3 hours. 2.5 hours, but yeah, there'll be lots of exciting things to come. Never miss a Farage speech is what my recommendation to everybody.
Yeah, fair point as well. Listen, Richard, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you, Richard Tice. He is, of course, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. They're live in Birmingham. Their leader, Mr. Farage, speaks at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And I think one of the problems we have, I sense, with politics, and probably life really, is this great kind of polarity that we've sort of found ourselves in, this chasm that sits between black and white, right, wrong, night, day. There's an opposition wherever you look, and the counter is never pleasant. People no longer have a different opinion, they become the enemy, etc. But I would implore anybody, to me, if you want to have an intelligent conversation about where we are with politics, you have to have an intelligent conversation about Nigel Farage and Reform UK. This is not a kind of little a temporary occurrence, a blip, if you like, in the political story of this country. What we're seeing here unfold, and remember, there'll be people listening to this. Remember, most people who listen to a radio show don't call in, they don't even text in. They passively listen away. There will be people listening to this who think that Nigel Farage is the Antichrist. They think that Richard Tice is bankrolling the Antichrist. These are chancers. These are market stall, snake oil salesmen who are just saying a few of the right things to get elected. Don't listen to those people because they would be wrong. And the reason I say all of that is a prelude, really, to making the wider point that it doesn't matter whether you don't like Nigel Farage and would never in your life vote for Reform UK. What matters is what is happening to our politics right now. And I thought Tice, I'd never heard that phrase, a loveless landslide for Labour. That fabulously encapsulates where we're at. The Tories at the moment don't deserve very much. They've got to earn that stuff back. And of course, the agitators in the wings, the new kids on the block, are Reform UK. And what they are doing is twofold. Firstly, they're talking about big issues that people are concerned about, immigration, net zero. So there's that. The only party really talking about it with passion. Again, doesn't matter where you sit on the issue. They're talking about it with passion. But of course, the other thing that they are doing is speaking the language that voters understand. And that's the bit we don't get from our politicians. We played a bit of a speech of Rishi, I think it was probably yesterday, on the show. And I thought, God, this man was awful. He was so bad. He was so bad. And then I was looking at Starmer today. Starmer obviously did the press round of doing all the regionals. It's something MPs do sort of once a year. They do about 15 interviews, all back to back, and each journalist in the northeast, southeast, etc., they all get their 5 minutes with the PM. And I just thought, he's also so bad, isn't he? He's so bad. And when Farage turns up and starts talking, you go, and a mate of mine just interviewed Farage either yesterday or the day before, and I was looking back at that and I thought, this guy's good. This guy's really good. I don't agree with everything he's saying. You don't have to. Is he a communicator? Can he communicate a message to other people? And the answer is yes. So the critics can stand in the wings and say whatever they like about what they think of Nigel Farage, and they can do it while he's standing in the same studio as they like about Nigel Farage. That can happen. But what you're also doing is massively underestimating the appetite for change and the appetite for, if you like, sort of politicians and political figures to, at the very least, reflect the agenda of what concern people and stop pretending from a sort of privileged metropolitan position that those agendas are invented by either Farage or right-wing newspapers, of which there are about 2 left.